I just went home and I felt sick, honestly. That night, all night, my stomach was in knots. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't eat.
James Fairbanks is speaking from a Nebraska jail to reporter Jake Wazikowski of our sister station, KMTV. Fairbanks is being held on a charge of first-degree murder.
I saw a man staring at kids, even though he is a twice-convicted sex offender.
Fairbanks is talking about Matteo Condalucci, a convicted pedophile, and the man he admits he gunned down. Fairbanks said he learned of Condalucci's criminal past while researching the area for an apartment. After noticing Condalucci's playset in his yard, a magnet for kids, he decided to confront Condalucci.
It was my intention to go over there and let him know, look, I know who you are. I watched you the other day. If you touch any of these kids, you're not going to get another slap on the wrist from the justice system.
Fairbanks brought his gun, and the confrontation took a deadly turn.
As soon as I started talking, he came forward, and immediately, again, he was a 6 foot, 300+ pound man. I knew I had to shoot. My intention was not to walk over there and just shoot, period.
While his actions have been condemned by law enforcement, community support for him is growing. In an interview with KMTV, Condalucci's daughter expressed sympathy for her father's accused killer.
I've been through so much hurt and pain. There were many times I wanted to do it myself, but I didn't want to give up my freedom, my family. You know, somebody had to stay behind to protect them, and that's me.
An online petition asking President Trump to pardon Fairbanks has more than 40,000 signatures. According to KMTV, Condalucci served less than 2 years for sexually assaulting a child in Nebraska in 2006 and was convicted of similar crimes in Florida in 1993.
There are children that are still out there right now who won't speak up and say anything against him because they're too afraid. Even in his death, they are still afraid. I know I am.
Fairbanks, once a paraprofessional at a middle school, says he has intimate knowledge of the lifelong damage caused by sexual abuse.
While working, I've watched the kids over the years that I've worked with. Just so many have confided in me the torment, the pain that they're going through with their abuse that they've suffered.
While Fairbanks says he's grateful for the support he's getting, he's urging people to channel their energy in a different direction.
We need tougher penalties. We need to stop cutting these deals that allow men like him to molest children for decades and only serve minimum sentences and be allowed to move right back into our neighborhoods alone and put up playgrounds in their backyards and just look for their next victims.
Meanwhile, a group that opposes public sex offender registries denounced Condalucci's death as the latest example of state-sponsored facilitation of vigilante murders.
So it sounds to me like it's a self-defense type of case here, is what's going to be alleged. Let's bring in Julie Grant. Julie, this is he admits he did it, but it sounds a little bit like self-defense, denying the vigilantism. But I still think this is a tough one for prosecutors because they may listen to this man and get the full picture and may cut him a break.
Sure. Yes, my friend, I'm in agreement with you. I think self-defense all day long is what we're going to see raised here. And yes, they really should consider everything about this individual, the circumstances, the situation. It didn't happen in a vacuum, right? There was lots to this and lots with Matteo Condalucci and his deplorable history of sexually abusing children. So yes, prosecutors need to take a good hard look at this. We know that this arrest just happened in early May of James Fairbanks, but already this case is garnering so much support because you can see both sides, right? Two wrongs certainly don't make a right. No one is saying that, but you can see where so many people were horrified at this child molester's behavior and whatnot and feeling like, okay, James Fairbanks might have done a favor to some whose pasts were ruined by this man. But then again, we know James Fairbanks, he's a civilian, right? So, I mean, there are so many, this case is Very, very complicated. No one has the right to take another individual's life unless you can prove justification under the law. So back to your point, Vinny, yes, self-defense, I think, is what we're going to see. And in the meantime, I think lots more support is going to be growing for James Fairbanks. There's a big Facebook group right now saying free James Fairbanks that's out there getting a lot of members.
Yeah, 40,000 we're talking about. Let's take a listen to more of Laura Smith, who is the mother of one of Condalucci's victims.
It took a year before anyone would believe us. It went from DA to DA to DA for a year. No one would do anything with the case. It was my son's word against a grown man's word. 5-year-old against a grown man. Finally, after a year, we had moved back to my hometown out of state, and it went into a DA's hands, and he wanted to meet my son. So we had made arrangements. Now, this is the first time anybody even showed any interest in the DA's office. So we had made arrangements to fly back, me and my son, to meet with the DA. The day before we were about to get on our flight and had the appointment with the DA, he called to cancel it. He was going to drop the charges. I said, no, that's not how this is going to go. I said, we have arrangements to fly out in the morning. I will see you that afternoon, the next afternoon, that afternoon. And that's exactly what we did. My son and I went out there and we met with the DA, and he spoke with my son for a few minutes, 5-10 minutes, and he decided that he was not going to drop the case.
This really shocks me, Julie, and it upsets me a little bit, right? If you've got someone who's potentially targeting 5-year-olds and you as the DA, I don't know, you would think the DA would be, all right, we've got to figure out how we can do it. Your job is to protect. Yeah, you prosecute people who've been victimized, but part of your job is to try to prevent future victims. And how do you do that? By going after some. I don't understand that attitude.
Exactly. Oh, you are exactly right, Vinny. And think about the most vulnerable people in our society, children, right? This 5-year-old child. And then, of course, after being passed around from DA to DA and kind of given the brush off, then finally, once they were believed, it was like, well, we're going to discourage you from really fighting this case. We want to offer him a plea to get something. And essentially, he just had to register as a sex offender. Wasn't really punished in the way we think of going away for years and years and years and being locked up and not being able to prey on anyone else. From what Laura Smith says, Matteo Condalucci was a monster, a master manipulator, a pedophile, and someone who ruined her son's life to the point, Vinny, that beautiful child we showed you the pictures of a few moments ago. This is Matteo Condalucci here, the pedophile. But that child, 5 years old, he was sexually assaulted by that man. It ruined his life. The child could never get over it. He went from being a happy, loving, laughing child to withdrawing, mistrusting people, turning to drugs to cope with his anxiety and depression and all sorts of mental health issues that occurred as a result of that sexual trauma that he endured, that sadly he died of a drug overdose in 2017 because he just couldn't get away from the coping mechanism to deal with all of the pain caused by that man. So you can see why Laura Smith is trying to be such a powerful advocate for James Fairbanks now, saying like, hey, this is a man looking to protect other people and looking to confront someone who he thought was about to prey on other children.